Why are you still charging prices that guarantee you'll stay stuck? Pricing is the hidden handbrake on your entire business, and until you learn how to release it, you'll never excel past the level that you are at right now. In this presentation, I'm going to take the mystery, the fear, the guesswork out of pricing forever. By the time we're done here today, you'll know exactly which pricing models actually serve you and which ones trap you, how to calculate your price so it reflects both your goals and the client's stakes, how to talk about money with confidence, even with the biggest, highest stakes clients, and how to position yourself so that being the most expensive option isn't a weakness, it's what actually lands you the job. These are the exact strategies I've used and I've taught to over 1,000 freelancers in the freelancing program and over 500,000 freelancers on the internet for free. These are the kinds of strategies that turn pricing from, one of the single most fraught with consternation components of a freelance business into the most powerful growth lever in your business. So over the next 90 minutes, here's how we're going to do it. First, I'll show you the 4 main pricing models: transactional, flat fee, hourly, and metrics-based that are available to freelancers, and the real dangers of each if you don't understand how to wield them. So I just want to get us all on the same page about those first before we go any further. Then I'll walk you through how to calculate your price for growth, starting with something that I call the floor. This alone is going to change how you see every client conversation. Next, I'll teach you how to communicate your price to potential clients using strategies like brackets, live negotiation, and what I call driving the bus. So you never feel like you're begging for the yes, essentially, begging for approval. And then finally, I'll share some more advanced strategies, like how to use specificity, niche, positioning to not just charge more, but to attract the kinds of clients that you want because you're more expensive. So if you've ever felt like you're drowning in work, you're not really moving forward, you got a weight vest on, if you've ever felt that pit in your stomach before talking about money with a client, or if you've ever wondered why some freelancers leap ahead while others just kind of stay stuck for years, stay with me. This presentation will give you the clarity and the confidence to start pricing like a business owner and not like a newbie who's kind of taking shots in the dark. And if this is our first few minutes together, hi, I'm Jamie. I've been freelancing for a little over 16 years now. And every day I talk to over 500,000 freelancers across social media, helping them build scalable, sustainable freelancing businesses. I've worked with a bunch of companies you've heard of and even more companies that you haven't, who paid better and were more fun to work with. And my wife and I are also the founders of the Freelancing Program. It's the #1 community of over 1,000 freelancers, all growing scalable businesses together. There should be a nice little link below this video to join us if that's something you're interested in. All right, let's start at the foundation. Before we talk about numbers or psychology or closing clients, you need to understand the tools that you have at your disposal when we're talking about pricing. Because pricing is not a one-size-fits-all thing. There are 4 main models that freelancers use, and they can either, if used correctly, they can build your business up, and if used incorrectly, they can sabotage it. First up is transactional pricing. This is the simplest. You create a product with a fixed price. This is like what you're used to seeing when you go out shopping in any retail store. Think templates, an ebook, a productized like micro version of your service. Everybody pays the same price. No customization. The upside is it's predictable. It's hands off. You can make money while you sleep, although, you still have to set it up. But here's the trap. It's not scalable for services that require your expertise and your input. You can't price for value of individual clients, and you cap yourself at volume. And the volume game is usually a race to the bottom. You usually find yourself competing on price a little bit there. Transactional pricing works best for byproducts of your service, not the service itself. So think like sell the template that you built for this project to make your life easier, but don't sell your service this way. Does that make sense? Next is flat fee pricing, and this is the most common in freelancing. You look at the scope, the complexity, the value of the solution, and set one price. It's flexible. It allows you to price differently for each individual client, which is important, and it simplifies accounting. This is how like builders quote a house, right? Material, labor, contingency equals one number. It's how I build for most of my video productions over the course of my 16-year career in that industry, right? Gear rentals, crew, location, contingency. Same in design, web, photo, architecture, what have you. Plus value at the end there. But here's the danger. If you underestimate, you can end up working twice as much for half the pay. And if you're not vigilant about the phenomenon that is scope creep, you can become your own worst enemy in this pricing format. Because flat fee pricing gives you control, but only if you control scope as tightly as you control your deliverables. Then we have hourly pricing, and this one feels safe to a lot of freelancers because it's measurable. You put in the hours, you get paid. Lawyers do it, accountants do it. Plenty of freelancers start here, but let's be clear, this model has a ceiling built into it. It punishes efficiency. The better you get at something, the faster you get at delivering it, the less units you get to charge for. And it sends the wrong signal. If you're doing this, you're charging for your time. Your time is the product, not your outcomes, which is incorrect. Yes, it works in very specific situations. If you're doing unpredictable, ongoing tasks where the client controls how much work is coming your way, or if you want to force clients to make faster decisions, that's probably the only time I ever use it. But the risk is you end up becoming an employee for rent. You're available on demand, but you're getting none of the benefits of being an employee. Hourly pricing is fine as a tool, but dangerous as a business model. Courtney would say to use it like salt in a recipe, right? Not the main ingredient. And then finally, there's metrics-based pricing. And this is where you tie your income to a percentage of the revenue or the results that the project makes for the client. For example, like running ads and taking 10% of sales, or charging per lead generated, something like that. This model is powerful because it aligns your success with your client's success. Clients love it because it means less upfront risk for them. But, and this is a massive but, you don't always control the outcome that your revenue is now tied to. If their product sucks, or their sales process is broken, or their landing page doesn't convert, you can drive all the traffic in the world and still see nothing. You can knock your part of that process out of the park and not be rewarded for it. Only use metrics-based pricing when you control all the levers that drive success for the project. Otherwise, you're leaving it up to somebody else. You're leaving your revenue up to another individual, which is not what any freelancer wants In 16 years of freelancing, I've never opted for this approach for that very reason. Okay, when I first started as a video producer, I made the mistake of pricing per minute of edited video. Sounds logical, right? 2-minute video, 2 units. Until you realize that like this 2-minute video took me 45 minutes to make, and then this 2-minute video took me 3 days. Same length, wildly different effort. And I realized that like I was essentially getting paid 7 cents an hour for the second effort. That was a fun conversation, convincing that client to switch to a flat fee. But that's the point. If your model doesn't reflect the value and effort behind your work, if you don't get it aligned real quick, it's going to burn you. The wrong pricing model creates a silent drain on your business, but the right model amplifies it. Master one model before you layer them in. So now that you know the 4 pricing models and where most freelancers usually trip up, the next logical question is, okay, how much should I charge? And this is where most freelancers get lost. They either guess or copy their competitors, or set one number and never think about it again and try and apply that number everywhere. None of those strategies work. I mean, they work in the sense that you get paid, but they don't work in the sense that you grow a business. Because here's the truth. Your price should change from client to client. No 2 projects are the same, and they don't deserve the same budget. You're always bringing different value. But what should never change is your floor. What is a floor, you ask? Let's get into it. Your floor is the absolute minimum number that you can charge to grow a scalable business. It's the number that guarantees you're growing a business that can operate on its own, with or without you, regardless of if you're behind the desk doing the thing, rather than a job that only exists when you're sweating it out, when you're working and implementing for a client. Here's the formula, and don't worry if you were like me and you were more of a language history kid than a math science one. It's a pretty easy one. You want it to be the annual income goal divided by the average number of projects per year. Take that number and then add to it the cost of responsibly subcontracting a project. That number is your floor. So let's pick some easy numbers and actually hash this out together. If you want to earn $100K in a year and you average 10 projects per year, that's 10K, right? So that first integer is 10K. And then you figure out that it would cost about 5K to responsibly subcontract the work. So you add that. So 15K becomes your floor. That's the number. That's the number you cannot go beneath. But it's definitely not your ceiling. You can always go above 15K per project. But you never want to charge less than what it would cost to subcontract your project. That way, even if you handed off the work, you would still be making the profit that you need to be to sustain the growth of your business. Now, does that mean that you're going to subcontract every project? No, of course not. You don't have to subcontract any projects. It just means that you could if you needed to. If you needed to step away and take care of something for your business, or if you wanted to go on vacation, or any list of reasons that you don't want to be at a desk working, your business needs to still be making money. Because if it's not, then it's not a business, it's a job. And you'll only ever be able to make as much money as you have the bandwidth to make. So let's talk through another critical truth when it comes to pricing. And it's one that I'm sure you've seen everywhere on the internet. I want to try and simplify it for you. And this truth is the V word, value. Many different people have attacked this concept from many different angles, and yet I still get hundreds of DMs from freelancers that don't understand this concept, or that think that they understand this concept and actually don't, which is probably worse. Let's try this. A poster for a local cafe and a poster for the next Warner Brothers movie are both the same job, but they don't have the same value. The cafe has maybe a few $1,000s at stake, and Warner Brothers has millions of dollars at stake. Price is not about the deliverables, it's about the stakes of the project. The higher the stakes, the higher the value. The higher the certainty a client requires in their decision making, and the higher your price should be. Warner Brothers requires more than cafe certainty to hire someone for this project. They would be very uncomfortable paying $5,000 for something, that has $500 million on the line. Now, that's an extreme example, but it's true for your industry as well. I promise you, the bigger the client is, the less inclined they are to hire you if you're not charging enough, because it signals that you're not taking their problem as seriously as they are. And before the contrarians jump in the comments and say, "Nuh-uh, Warner Brothers pays more because it's more work than the cafe," as somebody who has worked for the local cafe type clients and for major movie studios, I can tell you definitively that they are not more work than the cafe. In fact, the cafe might be more work. Okay, so how do you determine your value to an individual project? How do you figure out if you're on a sales call with a cafe project or a Warner Brothers project? You don't. You ask them and they tell you. This is the single most powerful question you can ask any potential client. Hey, how are we measuring success for this project? What's my scorecard look like? What's the success metric that we're tracking here to know that this is money well spent, this is budget well deployed? It's the first sentence that comes out of my mouth on any sales call, to the point where Courtney audibly groans when she hears it. She's tired of me asking that question. And don't let them off the hook with vague answers to that question. Like, oh, well, if it looks good, we'll be happy. Or, if we like it, that's how we're measuring success. So no, I need a number. I need a metric. How are we actually measuring this thing? I need to know that I've knocked it out of the park for you, and I need to know what we're optimizing for. And if they don't have that figured out, work with them to figure it out, because nothing else in the conversation matters until you guys each, are on the same sheet of music about that metric. And then once they give you that metric, you've got the blueprint for your pricing. You've got the answers to the test. Clients will literally tell you what your work is worth to them, as long as you ask the right way. And then when it comes time, 10, 15 minutes later to talk budget, right around where you should be setting that bracket to initiate that discussion. What so many don't seem to get is that pricing isn't just a number, it's a story. And when you set your price in the middle of the pack, market rates, the story you're telling is, it doesn't matter if you pick me, I'm going to deliver pretty much the same thing anybody else would deliver. So, go for someone cheaper, probably. But if you're 150% more expensive than everybody else in the pack, you're telling a different story. You're communicating, a different question. Now they're asking, what's this person know that everybody else doesn't get? How are they seeing this problem differently to justify that price? They might not always be able to afford that number, but they will always be curious about you. And that conversation is the real win, because that's something you can work with over time. There will always be more projects, more problems that those people need solved, that you can come in and solve for them. Now they're a lead forever. Being the most expensive option, it's not the repellent that freelancers think it is. It actually attracts the right clients and forces the conversations that you actually want to have. Now, if you're not used to charging that much, or if you're just getting started and you can't imagine who in the world would pay that kind of money for the thing that you do, here's how you're going to justify your new pricing. Specificity. Let me give you an example. If you follow me online, you've probably seen this one. A personal trainer who trains anybody with a gym membership can't command super high prices, even if they have, a wall of results. They still have to charge average rates. A personal trainer who only works with middle-aged executive women who have very little time on their hands, and need to optimize their training protocol and their diet for their lifestyle to a specific goal, gets to charge a hell of a lot more as a result of that specificity. They're solving a very specific, high-value problem for a very specific audience willing to pay for it urgently. The more specific your offer and audience, the higher your pricing power. Generalists compete on price. Specialists compete on outcomes. And that's the field that you want to do battle on. So you've picked the right pricing model, you've calculated your floor, and you've understand how to figure out your value to a project. Now comes the part that most freelancers sweat, saying that number out loud. Communicating your price isn't about throwing out a number and then not blinking until they say yes. It's about leading a conversation as a strategic partner. So let's cover a few things here. Let's get the obvious one out of the way. Should you list your rates on your website? Should you put them on your Instagram bio? Should you have a rate card that you share via email? Based on everything we've talked about today, what do you think the answer to that question is? No, obviously not, right? Because you don't know the value of a project until you've had a real conversation about goals. Every project is different. Every client is different. And your job is to uncover the stakes before assigning a number to that solution. That would be like a contractor who replaces windows on a house, having a website that's like, I'll replace your windows, all the windows on your house for $10K, without needing to ask, hey, how many windows do you have on your house? How big are the windows? Do you want them tinted? Et cetera, et cetera. Never, ever let your price be a sticker on the shelf, right? You always want to be pricing for value to the individual project, because your work is not a commodity. Okay, now that we got that one out of the way, the next bit is this. Should you have this conversation in a formal email pitch deck or in person on a call or in a meeting? Again, based on what you've watched so far, give you a minute to ponder that one. You should know. Always in person. A pitch doc with a number on it isn't a conversation, and you want to be in the room having a conversation about this stuff. Remember, you're leading a discussion as a strategic partner here. The major benefit of hashing this out in person is that instead of just assigning a single number, you can give a range to inspire discussion. If you say, this is $5,000, the client has two responses, yes or no. That's it. But if you say, okay, well, based on the success metrics that we've talked, some of your objectives here, some of the mines we're going to try and avoid, some of the obstacles we got to hurdle. Yeah, we're probably in the 5 to 10 range. Is that about what you've set aside for this? You open up the conversation. The responses now you have three responses. Either, yeah, it's about right to us, or yeah, it's a little high. We were thinking maybe we could get a little lower than that, or only 5 to 10. Wow, yeah, we'd set aside 20 for this, right? So, but all three spark a conversation that you now get to have. Here's a trick: if you're a little less confident in this area, put the number you actually want. Whatever number it is that you've determined would likely be the right one for this at the bottom of that bracket. And then put a number that's 20, 30% higher than that at the top. That's kind of a good way to start getting into this process. But yeah, brackets create dialogue. Money's an asset. And this is just a conversation about how much of that asset they have to deploy, right? It's just like you're about to start an evening out with some friends, and you guys kind of huddle up before going into the restaurant and say, what kind of night are we about to have? What are we optimizing for here? How much do we want to spend? All right. So you say your numbers. Now what happens when they react? Those three different conversations, starters that we mentioned. Let's take the easy one first. It's, yeah, that's about what we were thinking too. Cool, piece of cake. Move forward, right? Say you're gonna lock this up. You'll put together a scope of work document with a more concrete number for them that's going to be somewhere in that bracket, and get going on that. If they say, we were hoping it would come a little bit lower, remind them that that's the ideal range based on all the success metrics and the whole conversation that you just had before this, and that you just wanted to get on the same page about what that ideal budget looked like before negotiating scope and figuring out what we can do for whatever they have. Then you can pivot to, well, what budget do you have allocated for this, right? And start building out the solution that makes sense for that budget. But now that conversation happens in the context of how much the perfect version of this would cost. So they're they've got their eyes open and they're educated on that front. And then the last reaction that they could have to your bracket would be, oh well, yeah, we'd actually set aside a lot more than that. That's lower than we expected. Don't just take the W and collect your number. Let them know that if they have more of this asset to deploy, you can get them an even greater return than their expectations. You can say, oh, you have that much money and you are optimizing for this metric. You should be optimizing for this metric. We can get you way more than you thought you could get then. Yeah, let's take all of that. Let's take the whole budget and let's point it at this new goal that's even better than this one that we've been talking about. Always, but make sure across the board, always be negotiating the scope. Never negotiate your fee, right? So if they have less than what you set aside, that means you're going to do less, right? It doesn't mean, yeah, I think I could do this for that number, right? No. It's you've set the stage, of how much it costs. They have less, so make a version of this solution that makes sense for what they do have to deploy. Okay. What's next? All right, we mentioned this briefly early on, but I really wanted to drive this point home. Do it live. Never punt to email because you don't want to touch this money conversation. If you do, you lose the room. You can't see their reaction. You can't guide the discussion. You can't reposition or reinform them. They might draw a lot of conclusions about that number that are incorrect. And you want to be there to educate them. Always give your bracket live. That's where you can drive the bus, meaning you set the tone, you guide the discussion, and you keep the momentum moving forward. Price conversations are not about numbers. They're about leadership. I'm telling you, clients don't like talking about money either. It's just a human thing. If you can be the adult in the room here and make this discussion painless or even fun, you get the gig. Lead the call and you lead the deal, I promise you. Okay, so far we've covered the mechanics, models, floors, brackets, negotiations. What's left? If you want to move from surviving as a freelancer to scaling as a business owner, you need to play a different game. So this is where pricing becomes less about numbers and more about strategy. So there's a few quick things that we've touched on a little bit here that I want to call out specifically in this context, as how to think of them more strategically as you're implementing all of this. The first is that specificity wins. So a generalist is always competing on price. A specialist competes on outcomes. Anytime that you are sitting down to figure out what you're going to price a client, remember that example of the trainer, that the generalist with all the best results, all the work in the world, still has to play the market rates game, while a specialist gets to charge double or triple because they're solving a high stakes problem, right? The narrower your focus, the higher your pricing power. So think of it that way. The generalists are the ones that are playing the race to the bottom. commoditized freelancing game, and specialists are the ones that are rising to the top and creating predictability in their revenue. Most freelancers think that being the cheapest makes them safer. The opposite is true. Imagine that you are hiring for something mission critical, like success or failure of your business important. You see 4 proposals that are all priced about the same, and then you interview a 5th, and that proposal comes in 150 times higher than the others. Who are you more sure is probably going to see you through to an effective end result? Or which one do you at least want to talk to? Just so strategically, don't forget, pricing is a signal. It's communication. Being expensive doesn't repel, it attracts. From vendor to partners. So low-priced freelancers get treated like vendors. High-priced freelancers are strategic partners that are installed in a business. When you're seen as a vendor, you're replaceable. When you're positioned as a partner, you're strategic. You're invited into the meetings. They're asking for your thoughts on strategy. You're trusted with bigger budgets. Often you're brought in earlier in the process. Pricing yourself higher forces clients to elevate the relationship. It shifts you from, task taker, ordinary freelancer to trusted advisor that they need in their business every year. Okay. Breaking the referral plateau. Many freelancers plateau after the first few years in their business, and it's a phenomenon that I call the referral plateau. And it means that their business has grown faster than their network has, and anyone who would have referred them has. And so now they got to figure something else out. It's a classic "we'll got you here, we won't get you there" situation. Referrals are great, but they come from your existing price tier. And so if your network is used to you being the affordable one, it's tough to break out of that, and it's impossible to break out of that if you're building a business on referrals alone. Breaking through requires a reset. So raise your floor, narrow your niche, position yourself as the premium solution to a premium problem. If you've hit that plateau, it's not because of your skill. It's fundamentally, primarily because of your fee. Your fees got you trapped in the wrong pond. And then here's the final piece, scalability. If you want to grow beyond feast and famine cycles, you need the pricing that supports that growth. That means building enough margin in your fees to hire subcontractors, invest in systems, and buy back your own time. Remember, you're not just pricing for today's projects. You're pricing for the business that you want to build. Price with tomorrow's business in mind. You're funding financial growth here. All right, we've covered a lot today. If you've been taking notes, you probably see something pretty clearly now. Pricing isn't just a number. It's one of the cores of your business. You get it wrong, you find yourself overworked and stagnating. You get it right, and you control not just your income, but your trajectory and velocity. Let's hit the highlights. You now know the 4 pricing models: transactional, flat fee, hourly, and metrics based, and exactly when to use each. You know how to calculate your floor so you'll never undercut yourself again. You know how to tie your price to the stakes of the project. You've learned the bracket strategy, how to negotiate scope, how to drive the bus in live conversations. And then finally, you've seen how specificity, premium positioning, pricing with tomorrow in mind, all transform you from that kind of replaceable vendor situation to trusted partner. So here's the shift that I want you to really believe now. You're not just a freelancer guessing at numbers anymore. You're a business owner with a system for figuring out what price each solution that you provide merits in each scenario. The beginner who's been afraid of scaring clients away, you now have a framework that lets you charge in confidence, without that fear. It doesn't matter. The seasoned freelancer who's plateaued, you now see clearly that it's not your talent that's been holding you back, and it's not others' luck that's been propelling them forward. It's the ceiling that you built with your pricing, and you now have the tools to smash through it. I've talked to thousands of freelancers. I've been fortunate enough to have those conversations over the years, and I can tell you with certainty, more often than not, growth simply comes from pricing smarter. No additional work required. You just figure out this pricing bit, and suddenly you're making twice as much, for doing essentially the same thing you've been doing this whole time. So here's my challenge to you: before your next client call or potential client call, decide your floor, decide the bracket that you're likely going to suggest on that call, decide how you'll ask about their success metrics, and commit to only negotiating the scope, not negotiating your fee, your worth. This is your moment to raise that ceiling, to release that handbrake, and step into the next level of your business. Your pricing is not just what you earn. It's who you attract. It's how you're received. It's the foundation of the freedom that you're building as a freelance business owner. So the question I leave you with is a simple one. Are you ready to stop pricing like a beginner and start pricing like a business owner? Because that's what you are. Your price is the story you tell about your value. So act accordingly. Make it a good one. Now, we talk about pricing an awful lot in the freelancing program. It's a topic that often comes up in the client conversations room of the community. It comes up a lot during the live meetups. In both cases, freelancers will share, how they're thinking about pricing a project, or what a client is signaling, or what they think their value to a certain solution is, and we all workshop it together. And that's just one of the many ways that freelancers put the program and the community and the live meetups to work for their business. We've got all sorts of use cases, and we've seen all sorts of success across the over 1,000 freelancers that are in there right now, building scalable businesses together, helping one another out. If that sounds like the type of support that you think would assist your goals and help you grow in the next several weeks, then tap the link below this video. We'd love to see you in there. I'd love to chat with you, learn about your business, and help you optimize. Otherwise, subscribe and be here for the next one of these, because we're going to keep these videos coming, and we're going to try to keep them as valuable as humanly possible. So comment with some topics that you want to see get this treatment in the near future, and I'll be happy to help you out. All right, guys. Talk soon.